Hey, happy Sunday, guys. I've got a few things to talk to you about today. The spare parts for the Freebirds. As soon as I made that video and I told you guys that what I thought was coming turned out to be barrels, well, the very next day, I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but anyway, the very next day, I got a tracking number from Rustling with the parts that are supposed to be coming. That was, I think, a couple of weeks ago, so I'll have to check on those. But they're on the way, finally. Yay! I was able to, was it Friday? Friday, I did find a set screw, and on my second attempt, I was able to center a set screw in this new valve body. So, I'm going to be trying this out. I don't know if I'm going to do that today or not. But in the very near future, and we'll compare it to that shoot I did with the high flow valve at 1600 psi. So I'll put those neck and neck to see if we get any velocity benefit. Another thing that came in the mail, I've got a couple of upgrades that I'm doing. I'm actually upgrading an 8K gun, if you can believe that, and a 6K build that I did a while back. What I do in this line of work is I'm constantly trying to break things and find out the limits of stuff. And one of the limits that's always been a real pain in the butt has been the power switch, because if you try to run large battery packs on them, the amperage will just kill the power switch and wind up welding them in the on position. That's for the Blackbird. You know, we've got that figured out with Freebird. But these guys sent their guns back to me, and they just wanted them upgraded with everything that's come along since I did those for them. And well, I was sitting there scratching my head. Well, what can I do? What can I do to upgrade these things besides just the hardware that's come about since then? And I kind of painted myself into a corner because I told them about battery packs and all this and all that. And I really didn't ever like doing battery packs on Blackbirds for more than one reason. I've gone over that before, but I think the biggest reason was just because the difference between 5S and 6S when you're talking about batteries, because a large 6S pack would for sure weld the power switch in the on position, and that really wasn't a good thing. Even though the gun would work fine, you would either just have to splice in a power switch, hardwire the board, or whatever. So I kind of steered away from that. You know, when we're running 6 of the 14500s, yeah, the voltage is above the board capacity, but it really hasn't ever been an issue. And I believe that that's because they don't put out quite the amperage that these larger battery packs do with the higher C ratings. So without thinking about the power switches, I was talking to these guys about external packs, and that's really the way to go with these really high fire rates. And I came in here and I got to taking one of them apart, and I'm like, crap, I completely forgot about the power switch. So I put myself in a position where I had to solve it. And I did order some switches that we use on Freebird from Rustling, and I was looking at those, and I'm gonna have to cut the housing if I want to use those switches, and I didn't really want to do that. So looking and searching high and low all over the place, I found these switches, and these are, they look just like the switches that are that the boards use for the power switch and the trigger switch, but they're bigger, and these are rated for 5 amps. So these should give us plenty of an amperage rating to deal with the larger battery packs. So I've got to figure out a way to get this in there. I might be able to use some of the pads on the board to solder some of these pins onto uh, to get it stationary in there. I just don't know. But anyway, I came up here Sunday, and that's one of the things that I'm going to do while I'm up here. I also got a very interesting video from Ronald. Now, what he's using two dummy cells, four 14500s, and a stock board that's had the chip modification done to it. And these fire rates are quite crazy. He's got a 23-inch Max smoothbore tactical barrel on here, and we'll talk about what I think is going on after you watch this. Now, he told me that I had done this build for him, and I don't know if I did this during that period of time where I was modifying the stock circuit board to where it would handle for the 14500s. Now, I believe that 15 volt limit is just kind of another one of these things that was proposed early on, and then it was just went with like it was gospel. I believe DNC is the first person who publicized it because he did some really early work with the draws. You should definitely check out his channel if you haven't seen it. It's Drozed and Confused. Very cool stuff on there. Now, I've heard of people running a Drozed with what are they? The 123A batteries, and that's about the same diameter as a AA, but it's about half as long, and they're something like 3 volts. I've heard of people stacking those up in them and getting them all the way up to like 18 volts or something like that, and without having any problems with the circuit board. I've never done it. I've never cared to try to push the limits of it, but the capacitor on the board is only rated for 15 volts. So that's kind of why I've gone with that. And I believe the actual number was 14 volts. Don't quote me on any of this stuff. I'm just going by memory from years ago. Now, so I'm not sure if that has been modified to run 4 of them, but he is running 4 of them in there with 2 dummy cells. Yeah, those velocities are just screaming crazy. Now, he was using 2000 psi. I found that if you run 3 of the 14500s without mixing any AA's, that it actually hits harder than if you run, say, 2 of them with AA's, because even though you've got more voltage when you're mixing, you don't have to deal with the internal resistance of those AA's. And you actually shoot faster with less voltage. So I stopped doing that modification that would allow you to safely run 4 of the 14500s because, yeah, well, the other stuff I do. And we had this part. Sergey, I asked him to figure it out, and he came up with replacing one of these parts on the board, and he gave me the part number. I bought them, and I was putting them in there. I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, other than what Sergey was telling me to do. And so I used up all those parts and didn't have any more. And this was some time later. And I asked Sergey about it. He's like, yeah, I really don't remember what it was. And I didn't push him for it. It wasn't really that big of a deal. And then by that time, I found out that if you just run 3 of them and keep things simple, it works a lot better. Another odd thing about running 3 of them is they only work in one side, one half of the battery compartment. I can't remember which one it is. I think if you're looking at it, like you're putting batteries in it, I think it's the left side. If I'm mistaken, somebody please correct me in the comments. But now, so he was telling me that he's just running cheap 14500s, because if he tries to run the eFast 14500s, 4 of them, the magazine runs fine, but the solenoid won't hit hard enough to even shoot it. And I was wondering if that had something to do with, having the one in the one side. Maybe he was just getting power from one of these batteries. I don't know. Really weird. I never ran into that when I was running 4 cells. I don't know. But kudos, Ronald. That is ridiculously fast. All right, let's see what we can do with this board. So he wants to upgrade from a 6K to an 8K. I didn't really push the 8K guns very hard because of the issue of the voltage, and they didn't work very well with just the 14500s. It worked a lot better with a battery pack and the higher amperage. And so here's the new switch, and as you can see, this switch is the one that's going to get replaced. So it's obviously not going to fit on there. Now, the height isn't too bad, so I don't know if I'm going to have to mount this in the housing or if I can somehow mount it to this board, but I will let you know in just a little bit. Well, that was easier than I expected it to be. What I did was, on the contacts on either end, I just bent them over and under, like so. Cut the center contact down, and then I was just able to use the pads, and I've tested it, and it does work. Now, the only thing that might give me problems is that difference in height for the switch, but I don't see that being a big problem. While I'm working this out, this is a good time for me to put this on video, because I don't think I ever have. Whenever you have your cover off and you go to put it back on, you need to have the power switch held in here like so, because if you don't, if you have your power switch in the bottom part there, this little spring will break right off. I put 6 14500s in the battery compartment to test it out. I bent that spring up to where it was just about level in there. Probably can't see anything in there, but yeah, if you ever bend that spring on there, be really careful because you could snap it. But yeah, woohoo, that was a lot easier than I expected. And this is actually a big jump, guys. Okay, aside from the power switch, we got that out of the way. We've also got to upgrade the capacitors on the circuit boards for them to be able to run 6 and possibly 7S. I talked to Sergey about 7S, and he said that the limiting factor at that point will be the switch. And this switch is a lot beefier than the smaller switches we're using. I don't really even know the rating for those. There's actually a lot of ratings for those smaller switches, and I think all of them that I've seen have been in the milliamps. So we've got 5 amps now for that. So I don't see the switch being problem because, you know, with the big 6S pack, I've actually got one that it didn't weld, and I used that huge, I think it was like 100 and something C 6S pack, just giant thing. But I've got the capacitors on order, so these guys are getting their guns up to speed. One of them is going, two of them are going 8K, and I'm beefing up a 4K so you can run bigger packs on that. More voltage, more current means faster shots. So let's see. The flex regulators, I got an order in for those. Those of you who did order, they should be here, I imagine, midweek. I don't really feel like putting the prototype together again today and testing the BB centering. So I'm also going to do that midweek. And I don't know, I might even wait until the replacement parts get here, so I don't have to take it apart again and put it back together. I don't know. Anyway, I'll let you guys know when the flex regulators get here. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just go see my last video. They're really cool. And yeah, just order one from me and we'll get you going. All right, guys, I'm going to go enjoy the rest of my Sunday and maybe do some grilling out. It's nice and warm out there. All right, later.